Hello everyone and welcome to this very simple wreath tutorial. So today we are going to be working with a 14-inch wreath form. This is just a circular wire wreath form. You can get one like this at the Dollar Tree, Hobby Lobby, Michael's, really any craft store. They're pretty common style of wreath base. And what our base of our wreath is going to be made out of is actually some polypro mesh. So this is essentially deco mesh. Again, you can get this at really any craft store. This is commonly used in florals, wreaths, things like that. So this one is a pink with a red and kind of like metallic threading throughout, if you can kind of see that. So we're going to go ahead and get this open. Now, this is 10 inches by 10 yards. You can buy mesh in a variety of different lengths. I would say for larger wreath forms, if you're going to do a bigger wreath, I would go with a bigger mesh. So you can get it in like 21 inches. It just makes it look a little bit fuller, but since we are doing just a 14-inch wreath, this 10 inches should be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the wrapping. And the goal with this wreath, it's going to be Valentine's themed, but I'm not going to go too overboard, at least in my opinion, with the different things that I'm adding on. So the base is going to be this pink mesh, and then we have some really cute little add-ons like these red sparkly hearts that we'll add on. I do have another heart that will be kind of a main focus on the wreath. And then we have some ribbon to choose from to make some bows. And I also have this star garland, which I may or may not use. Typically, I have to kind of see how the wreath is turning out as I decide what I'm going to add to the finish. So this is a very simple wreath technique. It's called the bubble method and very beginner friendly if you are just getting acclimated to making wreaths yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this mesh and we are going to use pipe cleaners. So these are gold. The color really does not matter because you won't be able to see it once the wreath is complete. This is just what I had on hand, but what I did was I took full-size pipe cleaners and I cut them in half. So you just want to have these half sizes ready to go to attach your mesh to your wreath as you go. Now, how we get started is we are going to decide where we're going to start the wreath. So in this case, I'm just going to start it on this divider right here. You'll notice that these section dividers are all throughout, so you can just pick one. Some people prefer to start the wreath with a zip tie. I find that pipe cleaner works just fine, so I'll be starting it with pipe cleaner. But the key to a really pretty bubble wreath, something that I had to learn kind of the hard way through trial and error of making them myself, is to have consistency in the size of bubbles, because it's very disheartening when you start a wreath and then you get to the end and you realize some bubbles are bigger than others because it's not super easy to go back and correct. So I highly recommend having a tape measure or one of those kind of silicone measuring mats on hand so that you can measure each length of bubble and make sure that you're going to have consistency throughout. So for starters, I went ahead and set my roll of mesh down at the end of my workbench just to rest there. And I'm using the mesh rolling outwards, if that makes sense. So notice how the mesh is kind of naturally forming up rather than the other way around, forming from the bottom. So this is going to help your mesh to naturally kind of create that bubble effect as you go. So what we're going to do is we're going to start the mesh wreath. So you're going to lay your mesh flat. I'm just making sure you can see me here. So lay your mesh flat, and with your fingers, you are going to pinch and pull. And essentially what you're doing in this is you're creating kind of a ripple throughout the mesh Very simple. It does not have to be perfect, but just to get kind of your bunch created at the end. So notice how it's got kind of this rippling effect going on. And again, this is just going to help your bubbles form more easily. So once we have our little tail created, we are simply going to attach it to this divider right here. So I'm going to be attaching my bubbles in the middle throughout the entire wreath. So going to be attaching it on these two metal pieces right here, not the two outer pieces. So I'm going to take a pipe cleaner and I am going to simply place the tail on that metal dividing bar like so. And I'm going to put the pipe cleaner through the wreath form. So essentially we have it going through the middle like this. Here, let me make it so you can see me a little bit better. Okay, there we go. So you essentially just attach it like so. So once we have the tail attached, I'm going to flip it over. And as you can see, it's just the pipe cleaner coming through the wreath form. And we're just going to do a couple twists to secure it. I do it pretty tight to make sure it stays put. Just like that. So now we have our first attachment. So this is where our wreath is going to begin. So now that we have the starting point of our wreath, I'm going to move these for a second to get them out of our way. We are going to get started on our bubbles. So I have a measuring tape here, and I'm just going to use the measuring tape to measure out the length of each bubble. In this case, I'm going to do about 6 inches per bubble. So the longer each bubble is, the fuller and larger it'll make the bubble. For me, I like it to look a little bit more compact, so I'm going to do 6 inches, but you just follow your heart, kind of see what, when you play around with it, what looks good to you. So what we're going to do in order to measure this is we are simply going to kind of gather the mesh like so, okay, and we're going to measure our length. So actually, let me grab my real tape measure. 1 moment. Okay, this will be a little bit more helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and measure out 6 inches and just have it locked in at 6 so that I can consistently keep grabbing it. So we're going to take our length right here, and starting at the base of where the bubble begins, we are going to figure out what is 6 inches, and it doesn't have to be completely perfect, it just needs to be fairly consistent throughout. So once we have our 6 inches determined, we are simply going to push up, keeping our fingers in place of where that 6-inch mark is. So push up, and this is where you're going to attach your first bubble. Very simple technique. Once you get the hang of it, it's a no-brainer. So I'm just going to twist the pipe cleaner underneath. Some people flip it as they twist. I don't find it necessary to flip it, but do whatever is easiest for you. So now that we have our first attachment here, this is what our first bubble looks like. Now this is what the bubble looks like before you spread it out. So I like to spread as I go. I find that it just makes the wreath really come together well. But you can always spread at the end if you prefer. It's totally personal preference. So I'm just taking the bubble and pulling it apart so that it really expands and creates its true bubble shape. So that's what it looks like. Now, as you can see the wire and the pipe cleaners kind of through the mesh, but don't worry, because as you go and this gets fuller and fuller, everything will be concealed. So the tighter and the closer your bubbles are together, meaning the more bubbles you do kind of per section, the fuller your wreath is going to look. So I'm going to keep going on this specific section. I'm going to keep going, and once I'm happy with the fullness of this section, that is going to be the number of bubbles that I model the rest of my wreath off of. So once I determine how many bubbles I want per section, I'll make sure that I have the same amount in each section so that it's consistently full throughout. So let's keep going. We're going to do another measurement, about 6 inches. Pull it up, stick it in the middle, take your pipe cleaner, stick it through, give it a good twist. And the other reason why I like to kind of spread them, especially in the beginning, is because it'll help me determine how many I really do want per section. So I'm gonna go ahead and spread this guy, and just be careful because the kind of threading throughout the mesh tries to separate if you're too rough with it. So you just have to be kind of gentle as you're going through and separating everything. Okay, so there's my next bubble. And what I'll also do is I will also kind of push the bubbles together. So continue to kind of push them together on the back to make sure I'm getting that desired fullness. So that's what two bubbles looks like. So we'll move on to our next one. 6 inches. Push up. And the mesh is pretty forgiving in terms of how you grab it when you're creating the bubbles. I would say rule of thumb, just make sure that all the edges are curling under, which they naturally should if you're using the mesh in this direction with it rolling outwards. But as long as everything is curling under, then it should spread properly when you go to pull it apart. And each bubble might look slightly different. They don't have to be perfect. You just want that same kind of general shape and size. So I'm just going to pull that guy, give it a little push to get closer to its friends, and then I'll keep going. Okay. About 6 right there. Pipe cleaner. Twist, twist, twist. Pull it apart. And push it. So I'm going to keep going for this section. I definitely still want it to be fuller. I'm just going to keep going. And I'll be honest, I don't know if we will use this entire roll of mesh. There's a very good chance we will, but we'll just have to see as we go. But I feel confident that it's definitely enough to complete the wreath. We're not going to run out. And fluff it out. Perfect. Give it a little push. Okay, so right now, as you can see, because of how tight we're doing it, we've got quite a few per section. So we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pipe cleaners, and we're only about halfway through. So this is going to be a lot of bubbles per section to make it look very full. But if you're fine with a more sparse look, you can easily spread them out and get away with less. Like that still looks very pretty too. I just really, really like it to look compact. So I'm going to keep going with more sections or more bubbles. So we're just going to keep going. Another one. And it might also depend on how much time you're willing to put into it, because obviously the more bubbles you make, the longer it will take to complete the wreath. But even when it's time consuming, it's a very simple process. You just have to do it all the way through. Okay. So I'm realistically probably going to do, I'd say about 3 more bubbles on this section, but could be 2. Let's just see as we go. Now, if you're doing a bigger wreath than this, there is a good chance that you would possibly need more mesh, so just keep that in mind. Okay, I think this will be our last bubble for this section, just based upon how full it's getting. So one more twist. Okay, so this is what our first section is looking like. I'm going to kind of spread these more evenly apart on the back. Kind of make it a little bit more consistent. Okay, so I'm very happy with how this looks. As you can see, it's very full. Pretty hard to see the wreath form behind it, so that's awesome. So I think this is going to be the amount that we do for each section. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So nine bubbles per section. So now we will keep going. So here's number 1. Number 3. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing in my arm. Isn't getting too much in the way. So 1, 2, 3. Keep going. 1, 2, 4. And you'll notice the bubbles are going to try to move as you work, but that's okay, because you can always just push them back. That's what's nice about the pipe cleaners. They keep it secure, but not too secure to where you can't move them at all. Here is number 4. So I apologize if you can hear my stomach growling. Okay, number 5. And sometimes your mesh will try to get caught on itself, so just be aware of that. Don't want it to tug or pull too much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 6. I'm going to take off my ring for the moment to make sure it doesn't start getting caught. And number 6. Number 7. Number 8. And lastly, number 9. All right, so I am going to keep going all the way around the wreath, and once I get to the very end, I will come back and show you what's next. But for right now, this is the bubble base that we are working with. It's looking very pretty, and we'll move on to the next step when I'm finished. Okay, so now we are on to the really fun part of the process, in my opinion. So I have my bubble wreath completed, um, and let me just hold camera up a little bit so you can see the entire thing is done. Now, I will say there are some parts of it that have more of the like ripple texture, whereas others look a little bit fuller. Sometimes that just happens with the nature of grabbing the bubbles and pulling them apart and things like that. If that bothers you, you just have to be a little bit more meticulous about um, how you're grabbing the material and grabbing the mesh as you create each bubble. Personally, I don't find that it really matters, especially since I'm going to be embellishing this wreath. But if it's a wreath that you don't plan on embellishing and you just want the bubble effect to be the main design, then you might just want to be a little bit more specific about how you create each bubble and how you grab the fabric. But for me, it doesn't matter. So I am going to essentially choose where the top of my wreath is going to be. So on the back of the wreath, what I did was I just went through and I trimmed all the excess pipe cleaner and just kind of tucked each little sticking up part down so that it's not pokey, because pipe cleaners obviously have wire in the middle and it can be a little bit painful if you hit your finger on it just right. So I always like to tuck it in. You can always cover this. You can get like felt or even a placemat and cut out a circle to cover the pipe cleaner if you just don't like the kind of unfinished look on the back. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and decide what our top of the wreath is. And I just like doing this so that I have kind of a better vision as I'm putting embellishments on and things like that. So for me, since I did have more of a fullness on this section of the wreath, I'm going to make this part of the wreath the top. So essentially, I'm just going to lay it down facing the right direction. So this is the top of my wreath, and I'm going to start embellishing. So I really don't do anything super complicated for embellishments, honestly. I just go to the craft store and I find things that fit the theme that I'm looking for. You can easily order things online too. And I use a hot glue gun. Now, I will warn you, don't do what I did and burn yourself. I burned myself with my hot glue this week for the first time and it hurt really, really bad. So just be very, very careful when you're working with hot glue. But I do think that it is the quickest and most effective way to glue on your embellishments since it does dry so quickly. You can just work a little faster and it's very effective. So we are going to get started. Now, I have this really pretty pink glittery heart that I really want to feature in the wreath. Now, I was considering hanging it in the middle of the wreath, but I think I've kind of decided against that. And I want to do something different, but first things first, I'm just going to cut this tag off. And you can always find this stuff on sale at craft stores. Like this was $2.49 and I'm pretty sure it was half off. So I was thinking about hanging it in the middle. So if I did that, this is what it would look like. So essentially I would just need to trim or cut the ribbon and then tie it on the back, which would look cute. My only concern is that it's going to try to twist, which won't look as pretty. but it would look really cute. So you know what, we're gonna try it because even if I don't like it, I'm still gonna use the heart. So since it came on this pretty little pink ribbon, I'm just going to cut the ribbon in the middle like that. And on the top of my wreath, I know where my top is, so I'm just going to take that ribbon and just tie it. Very, very simple. I think people think that making things like this is so complicated and ornate, and like you have to be so knowledgeable about crafts to make these things, but they're very forgiving, which is one of the reasons why I love making them so much. Is you can really just kind of express yourself and decorate things however you wish, whatever comes to mind, whatever inspires you. Now, this ribbon is not being very cooperative to tie, I will say. So let's see how long I have to struggle with this. You get it to tie. Now I'm worried that it will not hang low enough with it tied like this. So we'll have to see. Okay, there's our knot. And this is what it would look like. So it would hang pretty tight up here. And when you hang it on a door, it'll hang, you know, with the heart in the middle. But I'm not in love with this, so we are not going to do that. Sometimes it's trial and error. So I'm going to go ahead and snip that ribbon. Not going to use it. And what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go ahead and take this ribbon off of the heart. So as you can see, it was just glued on there. So I'm going to see if I can just pop it off. Okay, there's one piece of glue. Well, maybe we can just trim it. These scissors are not super great, I will be honest. Honestly, it's like such a light pink color that it's really hard to even see that there's ribbon left, but it's going to annoy me if I don't try to cut the majority of it off. Okay. I would say that that is probably fine. So now we have our cute little heart. So this is going to kind of be like the main focal point of the wreath. So again, I'm just going to find my top, which I've determined is right here. Just going to adjust this piece of mesh a little bit. Just make sure everything is looking how I want it to. Okay, so we are going to decide where I want to put this heart. So a lot of times I like my focal points to kind of be like off on the side. But however, I was thinking it would be really, really cute to have it in the middle at the top of the wreath so that when it's hanging, it's kind of like right, it's right in front of the wreath hook on the door. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to place it right here in the wreath in the middle. And I'm just taking a look at my placement, making sure I like how that looks. And now comes the easy part. I'm literally just going to start hot gluing. So I'm going to take my glue stick. I always give it a little push. Make sure it's still hot enough and the glue is coming out. kind of have to prime it a bit. Now this has been on for a while, so it's very hot right now. And the one thing that you have to be mindful of when you are working with deco mesh is um, the hot glue will leave strings. It'll leave glue strings. So just be very careful when you pull it away from the mesh that you're mindful of where the strings are falling, because it's just not, it gives it a very messy look if the hot glue strings are all over the mesh. So just be mindful of that. But I just loaded this puppy up. I typically kind of go like this to get the glue gun off. And then we are just going to place our heart exactly where we want it. So I'm just going to hold it here for a minute. And I'm kind of going to touch up this mesh underneath. Just make sure I'm really happy with how everything is laying underneath it. Just like this. I just put it all over the back of the heart. And you just kind of let it sit for a minute and then it's good to go. So I think that looks really cute. I am going to pull this mesh a little bit lower so that it's a little bit fuller under here. Just want everything to look consistent on both sides of the heart. But I think that looks really, really cute. So now that we have that glued on, we are going to continue with the rest of our decorations. So we have our pink heart in the center, you can see right there. And we are going to add on our other hearts. So this is going to be like heart explosion. Now I was thinking about taking this garland and wrapping it around. I don't know how it will look, and I don't know if it's long enough. Kind of seems like it will be. But what I'm going to do is just kind of pull it out of the container and just see what it looks like. Now, some might find wreaths like this a little tacky. They're definitely for people who like things that are gaudy and really out there, but I think they're pretty cute. Very, very festive, fun if you have kids. Just lighthearted and like traditional pink and red Valentine's colors, you know? So this is a very easy little garland to work with. It's actually Christmas garland, but I think it can easily apply for Valentine's. So I just attached it on the back. I just literally wired it on there. And I'm just going to see. I'm going to see how it looks. And if I hate it, I can take it off. Like, that's what's so nice about crafts like this. They're just so forgiving. So I'm just going to start going all the way around, and I'm going to be mindful of how big my spacing is so that it's consistent. So I'm just going around, kind of making sure I like how it's placed as I go. Kind of wants to fall in between each crevice of the bubbles. And this was 20 feet of garland, and I did cut like a tiny smidge off of it the other day for a Christmas wreath. So just gonna keep going all the way around. And I actually do kind of look like how this looks. So this might be a winner. So we're just gonna keep going. It does do like a really good job of tying in the red. So just keep feeding it through, making sure the spacing is good as I go. Okay. Very good. And also, rule of thumb when you're making wreaths is you might think you're happy with how something looks, but when you hang it up on a door, you feel otherwise. So just hold it up as you're making it, like hold it up away from you and make sure you're happy with how everything is looking. And we're just going to keep going. Okay. And again, if you have like a wreath where you're not happy with how the mesh turned out and you don't want to worry about having to redo the whole thing, just put stuff on top of it. It'll still look good. You probably are the only one that can see the imperfections, honestly, since you're the one who made it. Okay. Getting towards the end. So I don't want it to go okay. So I've got my like initial placement. Now what I'm gonna do is kind of just adjust everything, make sure I'm really liking how it's looking. This one can be a little bit further over. This. But overall, I think it looks really cute like this. So I am going to go ahead and call that official. And I'm going to trim the excess. And now I'm going to do any final adjustments that I see necessary. So this one, go like this. I want to make sure they're about the same closeness for the most part all around. Let's see, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's like a few extra on this side, but honestly, it's fine. It doesn't matter. Okay, so this is our final look for the garland. Hopefully you can see that. It just goes all the way around. I think it's super cute. So what I'm going to do is just fasten this on the back, just like I attached it in the beginning. Just wrap that wire around it. And it should stay put. Okay, perfect. I am going to ever so slightly shift these up and over to make everything a little bit more consistently spread out. Like so. Okay. A little bit closer. And just play around with it. Just have fun with it. This is not a craft that should be stressful. And it definitely gets easier to make them over time. I will say I've been making them for years now, and it has gotten even easier with time. So perfect. Okay, looks super cute. So now we're gonna do our final steps. So I think I was originally going to possibly use some ribbon, but now that I'm using the garland, I just don't want it to be too much. So instead of any ribbon, we're just gonna use our fillers. So these are very pretty red glittery heart fillers, and you can use just like a lot of different unconventional things for wreaths. I mean, fillers, little like embellishments for like bead embellishments and things like that. I mean, you can just kind of go into the craft store and figure out what speaks to you in terms of, you know, what you're looking for in your theme, and then go off of that. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're literally just gonna place these at random. I love that they have different sizes. This is always super helpful. So I'm just gonna start gluing them on and just kind of decide as I go where I'm gonna put them. So it's typically good to have them kind of like on the sides. Hopefully you can see that. I'll just put that there. I'm gonna do a bigger one down here. That looks really cute. And again, just be so careful with your hot glue. Don't let anyone hurting themselves. Something that does annoy me about the hot glue is having to like push the glue stick in as you go. And don't be alarmed if you see smoke coming off of your items. Sometimes it just happens. Okay, I'm gonna glue that one there. Super cute. Going to hold it up. Okay. I'm gonna keep going. Here's like a medium-sized one. And literally just put it wherever you want. Put this one down here. And for this one, what I'm probably also going to do, I have some really pretty flat back iridescent pearls that I use for making headbands typically, but I think I'm going to put a few of those throughout just as an added touch. I really love the look of different sized embellishments. I think that having a bunch of different sizes really just makes it look more intricate, and you don't want it to look too perfect. I feel like having things inconsistent throughout typically looks cuter actually. So The one thing that I do typically kind of pay attention to is the direction of the items that I'm putting, but it doesn't matter. It really does not. I'm going to do this one. I am going to put right down here. Sorry if you can't see what I'm doing. Move all these out of the way. Okay. I'm going to do a few more tiny ones. It's always really cute to like put the tiny version right next to the big version. At least that's one of the things I like to do with them. Okay. Get another glue stick. And do another medium-sized one. Right down here. Okay. We're gonna do just a few more. A little tiny one right here next to the medium-sized one. And I'll do another big one. I'll do a big one up near the top. Okay. That. And then once you're feeling like you're happy with the fullness of everything, like I said, I recommend just picking it up and taking a look holistically to decide if you think you're done or if it needs something else. But I think just one more medium one for here. And then we'll do one more small one up at the top here. And I think we're good. Okay. So lastly, to top it all off, we are going to do our little pearls, but just to show you kind of how things are looking. I know it's hard to get a holistic picture. Show you. Very pretty. Very festive. Okay, so now we're just going to top it off with some pearls. Let me grab those. And I actually have some little tiny pearled hearts that are super cute. They're just a little bit hard to glue, but have like these little guys and some actual pearls. These that are iridescent. So I think I'm going to start with just these and just be very, very careful with your glue when you're gluing these because it is right next to your finger and so easy to burn yourself. I think the pearls will really just like add a nice little touch here and there. I'm actually going to pour some out so it's easier for me to see them. Almost dropped it right there. That was a close one. Sorry for the gasp. I'm admittedly a little traumatized from my experience the other day. Hold on, this one. Got a little bit of a leakage. Okay, we're good. I'm actually gonna be smarter about this and do it over the plate just in case I get any drips. And some are more like pink toned than others, so I'm doing like a mix of the pinks and the whites. And these types of embellishments are fun to put like on the inner rim of the wreath and like areas where you don't necessarily want something huge, but it looks like it's missing something. So I'm going to do like right here next to the heart. That's super cute. Do one. Here. They just add like a really cute little feminine touch. Probably said the word cute so much in this video. I apologize. just gonna keep putting them wherever I see fit. I'm deciding where the last few need to go. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how this looks. So I'm going to hold it up as I suggested and just look and see. And yeah, I think it looks awesome. So we are going to go ahead and call that done. And hopefully, I'm going to set this up right so that you can see it. Oh, it's trying to fall. Show you real quick. And this is our final look. I think it's super cute. And thank you so much for spending the time to watch with me today. See you next time.